Hey, welcome back everyone. Rob Marzullo here from Ram Studio Comics. So in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about perspective. And I know you're probably looking at this scene and going, oh my God, is he going to draw that? I'd love to tell you the truth. But for me, I would have to simplify this. Okay, and that's kind of what the discussion is going to be about. We're going to talk about perspective, but I want to show you that when you look at something like this, you want to study from it. You want to definitely harness whatever you can from it. But you want to simplify it, especially if you're going to use it for comics. I would say for anything. I mean, unless you're just really, your goal is to spend a couple months illustrating a really amazing scene and showing it to the world. I mean, I'm sure everybody would be totally impressed if you illustrated this in full detail. But me personally, I couldn't do this in under a few months, and I don't know, it'd be real easy to get, distracted and not finish it. But what I do want to show you is with something like this, there's so much information to learn from. And that's really the purpose of this. And I'm going to show you how to draw a portion of this, maybe just like a segment of the building, and talk about how you can kind of process this and use it for your comics and things like that. So again, you're not going to draw this entirety of the scene unless you really simplify it. So that's really the main thing. So what I want to do is first show you how to study from something like this. So let's see if we go here and kind of line it up. I'm going to use a shift-click method inside of this program to get straight lines. I could obviously set up the perspective guides, but I want to show you something else first. I want to show you how to study a scene like this and then find the perspective. So for instance, if you just simply take lines, whether you're working on an art table or whatever with a ruler, just draw back. You could go across all the way if you wanted, but just go back to what you can kind of see as the ending point within the scene. Oh, sorry, I gotta actually be on a layer over top of what I'm drawing. What am I doing there, folks? Okay, so we go past that, maybe a little, I could tell that they all kind of converge like this, right? But that's, I want to show you that you want to really pay attention that some of these buildings aren't going to all converge to that single vanishing point. A lot of them will, like obviously everything from this building will because it's on this particular vanishing point. So these lines here are perspective lines. The point in which it converges is your vanishing point, and then the line in which it resides will be your horizon line. Now, typically, in some scenes, you're going to see the end of land and, say, the start of sky, or the end of the ocean and the start of the sky, whatever, on a horizon line. But in a cityscape or anything with a lot of man-made structures, well, not just that, landscapes with trees, you're not always going to see the horizon line. So what we're going to do here now is let's pick this building, go back. So far so good. They're all kind of lining up. Let's pick this line right here, go back. Now right there, notice how if I went right from this vanishing point, if this is the right vanishing point, we still need to put a lot more lines. Notice that some of this structure isn't lining up entirely. It's pretty close, but it's a little bit off. And you can kind of see it with this out of the way. You can kind of notice that this building is residing a little bit differently than this one. So this is one of the things where as you start to draw more and more of this, you pay attention to this and you go, well, how come my, maybe my cityscapes look a little bit plain? And it might be that you're converging too much to one single vanishing point. What happens is that not everything is built in a strict alignment. Our perspective is going back to this point, but that doesn't mean that every single object is going to be, like if you look at the side of this cube truck down here, you'd have to really force it. If you went like this, it's going to change the perspective and the orientation of this. And the fact that it is kind of leaned over and these vehicles are crooked and things like that, that's what gives it area of interest. That's what makes it look like a real, well, it's obviously it's a real scene. So this is some of that information that you need to harness and think about when you go to draw your own scenes. Let's try this building over here. Okay, and here's a pretty decent, I guess that's still kind of close. Yeah, that's close. I'm having a hard time finding one that's off, but we'll get there. Okay, right there, that's kind of off. Yeah, so if I went from this top line, I carried through to the top of the building, try to keep this straight. Look how far off that is. Now, the main thing is that all of these will still be on the, let me grab a line tool here. I don't use this one often, so I gotta find it. Where are you, line tool? There you are. Okay, and we'll just hold shift and draw across, and this will give us our horizon line. Okay, so, and actually let me illustrate that with a different color just so it doesn't all blend into you. Grab some red here. Okay, so this is our horizon line. Okay, so that's where our eye visually is resting and looking at the scene. So this shot was taken from up high, like on a building or something like that, or maybe a drone. I don't know, maybe something I'm not fully aware of, but it was, you know, something. It was up in the air, and that's why we have this perspective. We're looking down on a lot of the things in the scene, except for the large buildings. It's actually a very dynamic shot. But so the main thing is to realize with the horizon line is this is your eye level where you're at in the scene, where you're looking, and that's why things above it will appear to be above you, things below it will appear to be below you, and you're looking down on the top of them. So just basic rules of perspective, right? Nothing groundbreaking there. But the main thing, like I said, to pay attention to is that not every single thing is going to line up to that one vanishing point. It will, however, converge at some point onto the horizon line. So for instance, if this building is slightly off of this vanishing point, then everything from this building will have a new vanishing point right here. So that's all you really have to be concerned with. You can put majority of everything on this single vanishing point because this is the main vanishing point. But for instance, say you have a plane flying over top, it's not going to converge to that single vanishing point. It's just going to converge, its orientation will converge to somewhere else on the horizon line. So for instance, if we take this building right here and we draw back, and it goes right off canvas there, as you can see. It's a 2-point perspective now because of the way it's angled towards our view, and the 2-point perspective is going to be way off canvas. You know, so this is like when you have a piece of paper on your art table and you stick tape to the very edges, you know, on your artboard. You put a little X on it and use your ruler. You know, so you basically have your vanishing points off the canvas, and that's what this is. So for instance, one would converge. Let's see, all the way back here off canvas, and one would converge all the way back here off canvas, and then those two would continually meet and give you every other detail as you work this way. It's going to converge all to that vanishing point. Now this has a lot of vertical lines, so you can't see it as well, but this is basically the way it would work, and that's how you would capture this building. And if you notice, this one's like that, but it's tilted as well. And a lot of these bigger structures are all going to have those variations. You know, again, 2-point perspective. You can see it's even slightly off from this other perspective. Let's try to converge this line back and see how close it gets. Yeah, it probably ends up a bit more narrow. So see the difference here and the way it's shortening? So I just want you to be aware of that. Again, I know it looks like a mess and it's probably like, what in the heck's going on here? But this is how you study this stuff, and you start to realize different perspectives, and you start to memorize these different patterns, you know, and simplify them. Again, you don't need all this crazy line work that I'm doing, but what you need to understand is, again, that each one of these can have their own series of, well, this one kind of meets that vanishing point, and a lot of them will, but here you see it's parallel to the viewer, so it's straight across there, unlike these where they're tilted into a 2-point perspective. So that variation gives you this very dynamic impression of this city, this very, you know, detailed and amazing shot, obviously. So again, take the time to look at some of these photos, do these draw-throughs, and really try to harness some of the information. Another thing is, as we zoom up right here, a common mistake you'll see in like perspective drawing, let's just get rid of these for now, is you'll have somebody will draw a window, and I've done this plenty of times myself. You'll draw a window and you'll draw another window, and because you don't study perspective enough, you keep making them the same size, like this, right? And then all of a sudden, you're at the edge of the building, and it doesn't look like it meets with the perspective. It's because you're basically not compensating for the fact that as this converges back into the scene, it's going to get, I lost my layer there, I went back too far. It's going to get more narrow. I mean, look at the width from here to here, and then compare that from here to here. You know, it's slight, but it's there. It's something that you got to be aware of. You can definitely see it more on this one, I guess. See, look at the difference from, you know, edge to edge of the brickwork to edge the brickwork there. There's a big difference in the width there. In a really just a short span, and now we have a smiley face with his eyes closed. But yeah, so, sorry, Probably should stay on point here. But yeah, so that's something to pay attention to, that as things go back into space, they converge and condense down. And look how compressed this window gets over here compared to this. So if your buildings aren't looking as depthy, that's one of the things. Next is like all this luxurious detail, right? And this seems scary at first. I know that when I first started drawing buildings, I shied away from all this. It was just all my buildings were like, well, I'll just use this block shape, and I'll put another block shape here and another block shape here. I still fall prey to this because it's easy, because it's fast. But then if you don't ever attempt to grab some of this stuff, you're not going to get the really neat Victorian or Gothic architecture that you could be incorporating into your shots. And it's really not that bad. For instance, when you go to do this, and I'm going to show you how to simplify some of this, but I'll just kind of start doing it now. You're just going to do something like this. It doesn't need to be as detailed as what's there, but what you can do is kind of skip a few steps, but get in, the shadow under the main part of the brickwork. So you always get that drop shadow. And then you just kind of convert all this detail to this basic shape that's still kind of similar and still reads, a little bit better than block shapes anyways. And then for this part, maybe just like a circle, a back bend, and a downward shape. So you can see it's not as advanced. If you were to get in here and really study these shapes, there's like all kinds of segmentation, there's multiple compounding curves, but you can simplify it and just get the bulk of the shape. So again, like a circle, drop down, back bend, whatever. I'm just calling out things. I don't know if that means anything. It's just trying to refer it to what I'm thinking as I draw it. And then maybe just a line across. And then once you get those bulk shapes in, and notice that, when you get those in and you pan back, let's put a white layer here. One moment as I find my color wheel. There you are. It's basic, but it's better than just a series of block shapes is what I'm getting at. So, practice just jumping in here and simplifying some of this. And then what happens is that as you get enough of this in place, you can step back and go, okay, well, I got those broad strokes and those bigger shapes and forms that I want to see. Do I want to add some more detail? Then you can always go back in and go, well, let me try to just add a little bit more. I'll do this little box shape, and I'll just draw in some scribbles. Like for instance, you'd be amazed at what you can do with just texturizing. You don't have to try to. I think that when we're new artists, we go like this. We zoom in and go, okay, I got to draw this just like this, and I got to get all these tiny little No, that's not what you're going to do. That's going to, I don't know, that's going to drive you insane. But what you do is you just get the broad strokes in, the drop shadows, like that. You don't even have to draw this bottom line. You could draw the drop shadows up here, the drop shadow there. Think about the shadows first, and then just texture it. Just a little bit of stippling. And you'll know when you find a texture that looks cool, you'll just kind of memorize it, and you'll do that more. I mean, I'm definitely scurrying through this, but you'll like figure out that, oh, these series of S shapes look cool, whatever. And then as you pan back, and then when you come back and ink it, you can make it look tighter or whatever. And then another thing is when you get to a part like this on a building, you don't draw all these little details you see in the shadow. I mean, have you ever noticed that in comics? It's very rare. In fact, one of the things you'll see is just grab this bulk shape, this base perimeter shape, silhouette. Always try to find your silhouettes. And just fill that sucker in. And then if you really want to detail it, you just come back with a whiteout pen if you're working traditionally. Or if you're digital, it's easy. You just click to this little icon right there, and it's translucent. And it's looking ugly because I'm using this pencil tool. I would normally just kind of ink this in. But what you do is you fill that in, and then if you want some little detail, you just come back with a few translucent lines and hit some brickwork or whatever real quick, though. I wouldn't even do it, honestly, because what you got to think about is when you pull back, that's not gonna read anyways, so get it out of there. If it doesn't read, get it out of there. And that's how you kind of start to simplify that. So I just want to show you a real quick and down and dirty way that I would look at that as far as simplifying it. And have fun with it. Look at these different shapes and go, okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna put I'm going to carry through right here. I'm going to get the block shape of the side of this, one little line across the top so it reads, the drop shadow here. I'm going to fill in these windows, just get the big shapes in there real quick and clean it up later. Just get the information in it first. So something like that, and then go, you know what, it's just too plain for me. I'm a super awesome artist. I'm going to put this cool little shape at the top, and I'm going to do some neat brickwork, and the center brick I'm going to have higher, and the next bricks will be a little lower, and you're all of a sudden you start pulling architectural reference from something else that you drew before, and it doesn't become that, it's not that hard to you because you've kind of done this enough where certain little details are pretty easy to redraw. But at first it's going to seem difficult. Like when you start to draw architecture and buildings and things, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be hard at first. It was for me anyways. And it still is. I still struggle with it, but I appreciate it now more, so I persevere through it. I know the importance of it for your scenes. And then when you got some good buildings, I mean, remember those suckers. Like one of the images around my art table right now is one I did of Venom, and I was kind of having a good day with my buildings or something. And so that's like my piece that's up on the wall. And I look at that for reference. And once I do a better piece than that with better buildings, that one will come down, or, maybe I'll have a couple of them up there. I'm kind of messy guy. But, so hopefully that, makes some sense to you. So let's get rid of this now. And now what I want to do is show you how we're going to, kind of extrapolate, if that's the right word, one of these windows and draw it in a comic style real quick. So just kind of one segment so that we're not, distracted by all this glorious detail. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now I want to show you how you can study from something like this, run it through your own like artistic filter. That's what comics are to me, is, just our own artistic filter and our own view of whatever it is we're seeing. It's not that we're recreating everything exactly how it is. I think that's the part that, makes it way more difficult and just not really even what we should be after. So what we get here is like just an idea of the perspective of this window. So I'm going to draw some of these lines, and remember that these lines, if they were to converge all the way back to a horizon line, to a vanishing point, that would give you your perspective. These are obviously just vertical. So that's our basic container of the window. So let's go over here and let's draw kind of a similar shape. Doesn't need to be perfect. That's why I'm not going to worry about rollering the lines or anything like that. I just want to kind of make a study here. Look at a basic shape that's probably not identical to the one to the right, but that's okay. Just kind of wing it. So there's our container, okay? And things we need to think about is, do we want to guess perspective all the way through this? If we don't, one of the things that you can do is you can actually just crisscross the corners, and this will give you a center point and perspective. And then you can kind of gauge in between these two lines. Notice that the bottom line converges up quicker than this one. I guess would converge. Yeah, they're both converging up, but this one has a different slant than this one. So if you mix the two, you got to try to guess the appropriate center there. Obviously we can try to pinpoint it more accurately with the reference here, but I just want you to guess. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect. We're not trying to recreate this identically. Now the first thing that I think is important, besides maybe getting in the shape of the arc, like something like this, you can see I'm actually higher up on mine. So let's drop that down. I'm going to get this main arc right here first, but I want to immediately think about the inset of the window. To me, that's kind of the most important part to get something like this to look right. So if we take this, and I'm just going to draw a deep kind of inset, I'm just kind of watching over here. I'm going to draw this line straight down or vertically here. And this to me is where it gets a little bit more complex. But the things I would say to pay attention to is the indentation here, the recess there. Noticing that this would just be a block shape like this, but this other brickwork sits on top of it. And then so does this ledge from woodwork or metal or whatever that is. But try to think past that and look at the underlying structure. This is really the main kind of brick, and this other stuff supports against it. If you start to do that, it becomes easier to see into this stuff. So, for instance, I'm going to draw back. Now remember, this area here is this brickwork. So as I come back like this, I need to get this other structure in place like this. This kind of ledge or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the technical name of it. And then these other ones are going to sit inside there. And just to simplify this, I'm just going to do one for now. So I'm going to bring the inset back. And you got to kind of ignore this bottom line. Remember, this is just the container. So it looks like there's another structure there. So it's really like this, and this line wouldn't even be there at this point. It just kind of shoots down all the way down the building. And this is the ledge. So it's more like this. Okay. And then as we draw up, we got this little, now I'm trying to grab this part here. We draw up. We pay attention to the way it, once it gets this point right about, we'll say here, there's this other shape that comes out. And I'm not going to draw this in full detail, but it comes out and over. You could really say that this is oh, no, that's not part of it, is it? It comes over like this. There's this face, but you could say it's this block shape with some edge work like this. Okay, so we'll come over here, pinpoint where that is. It comes out, over, drops down, and we're just going to simplify it. We're not going to do that face right now. Something like that. Okay, so that gives us the base shape. We can do some little lines to make it look more accentuated, more detailed. But then as we come back with this now, as we come up, notice that right about the top of that, it converges and it turns into this kind of seashell thing and all this other detail. So let's bring that up. This goes past here and it rounds in like this. This actually drops back. So I'm not going to carry into the next window a whole lot. Maybe just do that arc right there. But the main thing is, as we get to here, and we think about, and you see I've got this offset a little bit, don't I? So what happens is the ridge comes back, and you've got this flush part. Let me actually delete this for a second. So it comes back, comes over like this. Now we can even draw in the base shapes over here so it's easier to read. Like this. See, I'm doing it with a real fat brush. So you see it gets pretty complex in that little corner. So we got to simplify this so it's not too much to visualize and get done. Let's try something like this. See if that reads. And we've got this next piece that comes out. Again, we want to simplify this, ignore the face shape, because it could really just be some of that, Victorian kind of scroll work. This is obviously more advanced where there's faces in it, something like that. So now I'll come over here and you see, once I've done that, it becomes easier to kind of pinpoint where I've made some mistakes here. And it looks like this shape altogether should be over more. But I'm going to go ahead and ignore that because, again, I don't want to get caught up too much, and I'm already feeling myself doing that where I'm trying to emulate exactly what's there. So I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go, what if the brickwork just came around like this? It's not as impressive as what that one is, but it'll still read. Get those little segments in, and I kind of fan around as I do that. Think about the perspective as the bricks go back. Something like that. And then the inset of this is just a couple drop shadows, for instance. Like that. Continue on with the perspective this way. Again, we can judge it with these lines that are already in place. And what I want to do here is, you see there's actually another segment that goes like this. That's my phone trying to talk to me for some reason. Gotta love technology. Leave me alone, Siri. I'm busy. Okay, so something like that. And yeah, let me go ahead and take what we got here. And what else can I grab from here? I'm going to grab the air conditioner because one of the things I think is important about stuff like that is not forgetting how messy we are as humans and like incorporating some of that You know, not just drawing everything all clean and neat and every window identical. You know, having a few air conditioners popping out, this wire going across, this, you know, all these little details. You know, if you can incorporate some of that, it's going to make your work look a lot more interesting. And the cool thing about details like this is you really can be messy with them. You know, it can be more tattered and beat up. It's kind of the fun part, I think. So we get some of these separations from the window, something like that. And then we'll start getting in. Let's see, what do we got here for the brickwork? This is the larger recess here. So these bricks will go back. I'm just going to quickly draw these in. Not worrying about perfection again, just getting the details in place. Always remember, done is better than perfect. And especially in the rough sketch of the, you know, what you're doing for the comic, you want to get the conceptual design of everything in there. And when you go back and clean it up for your redraw, you can make a lot more sense of it. But you just got to remember that, you know, more detail will kind of pull it all together. You know, even if it's messy detail, you just can't omit certain parts that make it read well or make it make sense. So let's say something like that. We do have this next piece that comes out front. I don't want to skip that because I think what happens there is it makes the this window look a lot more impressive, like it reads better because you're seeing how it all ties together, I guess. So we'll make that one stand in front. And these silhouette shapes do a lot for your work. So remember that we can draw from what's here and get a rough idea where these shapes are going to land. And we can continue on with our little brickwork. Okay, and that's it. I'm actually going to hide the reference now because there's so much going on here that I could go on for days trying to grab all these little details. And I want to show you how you can fake some of it too. So we're going to hide the reference now. Oh, well, let me hide it all the way. Come on. I don't even want to see it. I want it out of my mind, out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't matter, I guess. But, okay, I can't hide the reference all the way. It's going to be peeking at me there. So let's take and erase this back now. Or better yet, let's bring this over and make a copy like this. Forgive me for you traditional artists that can't make a copy like that. Run over to your copy machine, hit copy, waste some ink. But I just want to show you that, you know, I'm going to push this information back with a soft erase. And now I want to try to draw through it. And, you know, even add little bits of it. So I've got, you know, a bunch of information here that I can use now. I'm not totally in the dark about what this might look like. It doesn't mean that it has to be exactly the way that I've sketched it. I just want some information. Now, at this point, I'm thinking more like line weight and, you know, making it look more like a comic piece and than I am about redrawing it and getting all the details right. If I wanted the details right, I would have kept the reference in front of me. But I'm not looking for that. I'm actually looking to make this more like, you know, something I'd put in a comic page. So I'm going to block in more shadows. You know, just remember that shadows are your best friend in comics because they will save you a ton of time in certain areas of your work. And they make the art pop. Like you can't, unless you're going to do a heavy colored style, then you can do this just line weight version of everything. And some styles are actually really, really impressive like that. But a lot of times, especially if you're doing kind of a dark, ominous vibe, I think that you got to use these shadows to your advantage. But the main thing that I always think about them now is not only do they make the artwork pop, they save you a tremendous amount of time. And, you know, keep in mind, like right here, I want to show you, like, you could take this whole area and just fill it in. You know, if this is going to be a shadow, you don't need to dink around with every little brick. Just get that filled in really quick. Find the plane change, and then come back with a, I'll usually switch to a G pen for this because it's more of an ink pen. But if you're traditional, you're just going to use a whiteout pen. And you don't even have to hit every one of these bricks either. I think that's another thing that makes it read poorly, is when you're trying to get every single line, not only in just the right place, but like the same clarity. You want some that are like kind of missing and some that are moved over. You know, you got to think the people that made this building probably weren't perfect either. You know, they probably made some mistakes as they were doing the masonry work. I don't know if you got to look that far into it, but just mix it up, do some thicker lines, be okay with a few imperfections, scribble here and there, texture here and there. And, you know, keep in mind too, if this is a window, I'm perceiving this is a window that we're kind of up close to in the shot, or I wouldn't even be putting in all this detail. So that's the other thing you got to think about. As you get further away from the shot, you're going to eliminate some of this detail and be okay with, you know, doing these little scratches and, you know, mucking it up a bit and, you know, texturizing it, things like that. It's fun. It adds more creativity to it. It's more storytelling, I think. Like, it just adds a lot to it. Like, don't make everything so clean and pristine, whatever. So okay, so just like that, we got the one little area of brickwork. So we'll use this to do this, but let's work over from here. Now you can see this oval's pretty bad. If I wanted this to be better, I would just use my perspective. I would draw a rectangle first. I would find center, you know, so keep that in mind that you can always clean your stuff up by using perspective, finding center. If you want to map out this shape to the next, you go from the center line here, from this corner to this center. I did it really messy, but hopefully you can see that. And as it lands, once it hits this perspective line, that will actually give you this next shape, the same as this shape, in perspective. I know it's really messy, and if you need a better tutorial on that, I can give it to you. But basically, it's just basic rules of perspective. I'm not going to do all that. I just want you to be aware that I am aware that this could be a better oval, half moon shape or whatever. But I'm just going to kind of fake it and get in here and scribble and try to cover it up. So again, I'm going to put a nice heavy shadow right here because it makes sense, especially with what I've already put down. So you want some kind of consistency in the work. And then I like the shadow here. I like the other thing that I think is important for windows or trim work of buildings is variations in the depth of the trim. So for instance, if I do these two trim pieces identical, it looks a bit weird because it's like, oh, I just did the exact same thing. So I just need to add something else, maybe a thinner line next to it or whatever, and then immediately it reads a little bit better. Likewise, if I put some separation here, again, like some kind of brickwork or whatever, maybe I do this one just a little bit different. You know, whatever. It's just things like that that can help to kind of sell it. And you could do a little tiny, I don't know if that's too much, but I don't even like that one. Maybe I'll just put one line or something. But again, just kind of making it read differently so it's not so repetitive. It's real easy to do this stuff and make everything repetitive and then kind of lose some of that quality of what you can do here. So let's go ahead and take this. Let's put an angle back. So I'll just take this. Again, this is where I'm showing you how you want to sometimes just make changes on the fly, just because you learn that way. Like you don't need to keep everything exactly. This is just a sketch. We're just studying and trying to learn from the existing work. So something like this, make sure to overlap some of these trim pieces so they're not all kind of traced objects of the existing shape. You don't want to do that. You want to try to think a little bit more independently about it. Put maybe another little trim line back here. Again, don't overdo it if it's not going to read well. So think about what this shot is. Again, I'm picturing this as more of an up close shot. So back here, you see I got to clean up some of this, and I got to think about what's going on right here. So what I would probably do, I'm a bit of a cheater, I would probably just do like a little bit of a shadow right here and some cross hatching or texturing. I don't know, just something to make it look like it's got some detail when in fact I didn't do anything but just kind of shade it. A couple little imperfections, little cracks or whatever. So there's things you can do there. I don't know if that actually helps it or hurts it, but again, I want to show you how I would try to do it in my own style, and that's probably something I would have did there. So there's that. Now, lots of cool things you can do with the windows. You can block this in. You can do some little glare lines. Those don't look like glare lines. Or you can do like the one I always like. I used to always pick up on this when I look at Todd McFarlane's work. He'd always do the blinds, and he'd always make them like crooked. I always thought that was really sweet. Like it was like, there'd be like some going like this, and all of a sudden there'd be a gap, like they were broke, and so it's funny how and he would just scribble them. You could tell they weren't really lined up or perfect. And you could do a bigger shadow at the bottom. So again, not to make it overly repetitive. And that little line you get to the one side or whatever. So that's just something else you can do. It's kind of a quick fix, and throw it in there. Remember we had this like fan looking seashell thing. I didn't really like that. It's not bad. But what I would probably do is just maybe just call that a window, and I could either fill it in. Let's try that, see if it reads well. Something like that, and I could come back with light. I could do some trim lines like this. It's kind of quicker than trying to draw that seashell thing, and it kind of reads pretty much the same. So now the thing that's going to make this work better is if I was to find this shape and find center so that I get these in the right place. But again, I'm not going to be too awfully critical about this. I don't like that part. I don't think I like those either. Hold on one sec here. Let's try just a glare. Like this. I can't do glares today, folks. Normally I'm pretty good at glares. So this brings me to my next topic, bad days in art. Let's just go ahead and go back to something plain Jane. Let's just do another little shadow here. Get shadow crazy. And we'll just do the divide like this. Is that about right? Yeah, I think that reads okay. If not, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a pass on that one. So let's do the bricks here. Now we got to remember too, as this rotates around, that we're going to get more of this side of this shape. So let's go ahead and draw that in. And again, I'm just going to block this in. And let's go ahead and do this side. Remember that we can find our perspective with what's already on the page. And watch the perimeter shape right here. So you could use this shape to find your perspective first, like that, and then study the perimeter shape. You see I went with a really basic version of what we were originally studying, just because it made my life easier. And I think another part of doing this for comics is being ready to draw whatever you're going to draw. So like, for instance, if you aren't ready to draw this big, amazing, advanced scene, then don't. Just get what you can in there, show some confidence in your work, and later on you will get to that advanced scene. You got to work up to it. So don't throw too much on your plate at once. I'm always going to stress done is better than perfect. You got to get as much as you can in there with what you feel confident about, simplify where you can, and move on to the next thing. And through the repetition of drawing comics, believe me, you're going to get good. As long as you don't quit, you'll get good. That applies to anything. But so with this edge of the brickwork, I just want to stress how you can really make this messy. I think it looks cooler if you do. So like, for instance, I think these ones are too straight and clean. And since these ones are a little bit closer to the viewer, like for instance, I could draw over and find every brick in perspective. And I just don't think that's necessary. One person that comes to mind that you can study for this portion is David Finch. Last time I checked, he was drawn for Batman. I don't know what he's drawn for now. These guys move so quickly, but his bricks are so cool. Like, he just does them in a way where you can tell he doesn't map them out, but they look amazing. He just shades them in just the right way and adds a phenomenal amount of grit to them and things like that. And he's got very dynamic shadows in his work. So just look at things like that. When you see these guys, their work, try to look through it and go, oh, you know what? They're skipping some steps here, and it still looks amazing. They're not trying to draw every brick with a ruler. I don't think, anyways. I don't think maybe that's just the art styles that I like. Maybe some artists do that, but I wouldn't think that it would even make sense for comics, but yeah, so like with this edge, try to get over here and like really mess it up a bit. Have a brick sticking out and one recessed back, one broke, you know, whatever. And your work, I think, in my opinion, will look better because of that. And I think I kind of messed this up because this would need to come down and maybe create another ridge. But I'm just going to leave that for now. Hopefully you get the idea. And let's go ahead and do our, ugly little air conditioner here. So again, with this, I'm going to not worry about it looking perfect. The only details I remember, because I'm not looking at the reference now, but basically was there, it was a couple little ridge lines and a couple little lines over. And like this, you could say, well, I don't like all these horizontal lines, or horizontal line perspective, obviously, but because I've already got these blinds going on, it looks a bit too repetitive. You could guess that this could be a mesh pattern. It doesn't need to be the exact same pattern. This is what I'm saying about just being okay to change things. It's not going to kill the design if you decide to say, well, I think my air conditioner is going to have a different pattern there, and it's going to have these little vents on the side and maybe a little sticker that's crooked, whatever, so just be okay to experiment, and then again, muck it up, put some little imperfections on it, little dents, little dings. It's just going to make it look a bit more probably believable, I guess. And then we've got this, what was this, a ledge, kind of a big shadow there, kind of a shadow on the side of the ledge over here, and so on and so forth. So at any rate, I know this video is like really awfully long. I don't know how many people are actually going to follow through this one, but I just want to give you some ideas on how you can kind of process some of this, because I know that when I first started doing architecture and buildings in my scenes, I was very apprehensive to do anything like this. I was always doing something a bit more boxy and plain Jane, and all you have to do is just look past the complexity. That's why I wanted to show you that big amazing city at first, and then just do a study, because I know it's real easy to look at that and go, whoa, I can't draw that. I know I look at that and I think that now. I know that if I really took my time and broke everything down, I could do it, but would it be feasible for trying to put into a book? Probably not. So the main thing is that you just try to pick and choose, what you want to see in your work, and just grab from that, harness that, and then it's not so bad. It's actually a lot of fun. See, I missed those little inset ridges right there, details. And remember, negative line drawing can save you a bunch of time. Blocking those shadows, put in some little details, and makes it a lot quicker. And I could just go on and keep doodling with that. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can look through the detail, do your studies, create a bunch of studies where you look at a different window each day and grab from that. The windows have a lot of great detail, and what you learn from just the window will even translate to bigger parts of the building. And then study the different architecture types. Study Victorian and Gothic, and I can't remember the different names right now, but there's a bunch of them. Study them, get into them, learn what you can, and see what you can do. Modern, contemporary, stuff like that. I don't know if that's architecture or just a little bit of everything, but yeah. So hopefully this video has been helpful. I'm going to cut it to a close because I guess I'm running out of things to say here. But thank you very much for the support of the channel and for watching this video. I hope you found it to be helpful. If you have, be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. And I'll bring you some new content on the way real soon. And let me know if you want to see more drawings of buildings, or if you just want me to shut up and draw characters, because that's mainly what I do on this channel. But thanks very much. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.